December 7th. That date had a red circle around it on my calendar, a shaky line my old hand had drawn weeks ago. Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. It wasn't just any day, it was a promise I made myself, a yearly trip. The National Veterans Museum held its tribute, and I wasn't going to miss it this time. At 87, things take a bit longer. My eyes aren't as sharp as they used to be, the world's edges a little fuzzy. My hands shake now, a constant tremor that's just part of getting old. And my walk? A slow shuffle, each step a reminder of the years gone by. But my mind, that's still clear, especially the memories of Korea in '52 and Vietnam in '68. Those places and times are burned into me, deeper than any scar. Getting to the museum meant 3 different buses, timed just right. I was up before the sun, the city still quiet. I took out my old combat boots, polished them until they gleamed, a little ritual of respect. Then my army jacket, faded but still mine. I pinned my bronze star on, the metal catching the faint light. My granddaughter offered a ride, but I told her, "You've got your own life." Besides, this trip felt personal, something I needed to do alone. The December air was sharp, biting through my thin jacket as I waited for the bus. It reminded me of colder times long ago. The first bus was crowded, everyone rushing. I held onto the rail, just trying to keep steady. The second bus was a bit calmer. I sat by the window, watching the city wake up. The third bus finally brought me closer. As the museum came into view, my heart beat a little faster. Marble steps, tall columns. Honoring those who served, the banners read. I paused at the bottom, catching my breath. The climb would be slow, but I was here. I had made it. This wasn't just a museum. It was a connection to a part of me I never wanted to lose. A place to remember, to honor, and maybe to be honored. The museum stood tall and white, those marble steps rising like they were reaching for the sky. Big banners declared, "Honoring those who served," and "A special tribute." The words hit me right in the chest. This was it. This was where I needed to be today. A place where maybe, just maybe, my time, our time, would mean something. A feeling of pride started to bubble up as I looked at the building. This was for us, for the ones who put it all on the line. There was a bit of nerves mixed in too, a little flutter in my stomach. I wasn't just some tourist, I was one of them. Or at least, I used to be. I got in line with the others, all sorts of people. Families with kids running around, younger vets in their sharp uniforms looking so squared away. They moved with that easy confidence I remembered having, a lifetime ago. There was a quiet understanding in the air, a shared history. I felt a pull, a sense of being back where I belonged. The line moved slowly towards the entrance. A young guy in a security uniform was checking IDs. He looked serious, maybe a bit bored. He'd glance at the cards the younger vets showed him, nod and wave them through. A quick, respectful exchange. I watched him, a little knot forming in my gut. My ID wasn't exactly a pristine military card anymore. As I got closer, I straightened my old jacket. It was worn, but it was mine. The bronze star felt heavy on my chest. I wanted to look like I belonged, like I understood the weight of the day. I went over in my head what I'd say, a simple hello, a mention of my service. I hoped for a nod, a thank you for your service. Finally, it was my turn. I took a breath, a mix of pride and a little bit of worry swirling inside me. This was the moment. Time to show them who I was. Time to be welcomed in. "Good morning, son," I said, giving the security guard a friendly smile. It felt like the right thing to do, a way to connect. He barely looked up from his clipboard. "ID," he said, the word flat, without any warmth. I kept my smile, though it felt a bit tighter now. "I served in Korea, Vietnam," I told him, my voice steady. 38th Infantry in Korea, Special Forces in Vietnam. I said it proudly. the words still sharp in my mind. He finally looked at me, his eyes quickly scanning my face, my hands, my jacket. "Sir, we need proper identification. Military ID, VA card, or discharge papers. Can't just let anyone say they're a vet. Rules are rules." His words hit me hard. "I haven't had an ID in years," I explained, trying to keep my voice even. "But I brought this." I carefully took out the photograph, the old one of me in Korea. I showed it to him. Young, strong, standing with my unit. "That's me," I said, pointing to the face in the picture. "Back then." He barely glanced at it. "Could be anyone," he said, his voice dismissive. "No ID, no entry." His words were like a punch. I felt a mix of disbelief and humiliation, a veteran being treated like a liar, my service, my life, reduced to a piece of plastic. "But," I started, but I didn't know what to say. How could I explain? "Sir, you need to move along," he said, waving his hand. "People are waiting." Impatient, dismissive. I was just a problem. My head swam. I felt heat rising in my face, a mix of anger and hurt. But I kept my back straight. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. I turned and walked away, the wind suddenly colder. As I walked away, it wasn't just the cold that got to me, it was the whispers. A woman in a fancy coat muttered something about homeless guys trying to sneak in. Her voice was sharp, cutting. A few others chuckled, a low, mocking sound. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. They agreed. I was just some old man trying to get a free ride. Their words were like little knives twisting. I felt a wave of shame, not for what I'd done, but for what they thought I'd done. I wasn't there for handouts. I was there to remember, to honor, to be with my own. But in their eyes, I was just a nuisance. Inside, my chest tightened. I wanted to yell, to defend myself, to say, "I served, I fought." But pride kept me quiet. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I kept my back straight, my head up, even though my heart was sinking. I walked away, each step heavy with disappointment. The wind felt like a slap, not just cold, but cruel. In my hand, I held the flag. My brother's flag. He never came back from Korea. This flag had covered his coffin. It was a link to him, to the past, to a loss that still hurt. I held it tighter now, the fabric rough against my hand. It was more than just cloth. It was a symbol of honor, of duty, of sacrifice. I held it close, protecting it from the disrespect I'd just faced. It was all I had left. As I walked, I felt alone. A veteran, treated like an outsider. The grand entrance, once welcoming, now felt like a barrier. I came for connection, but found rejection. The day, which started with hope, now felt heavy. I didn't notice her at first. My head was down, my thoughts heavy with the guard's words and the crowd's indifference. I was lost in my own disappointment, feeling invisible. But she was there, across the street. A woman, dressed in a sharp, expensive-looking coat. She wasn't with the families or the young vets. She was different. She stood apart, watching. I didn't see her face clearly, but I felt her eyes. It wasn't the dismissive glance of the woman in fur or the mocking smiles of the others. It was focused, intense. She saw it all. She saw the guard turn me away. She saw me try to explain, to show the photograph. She saw me walk away, my shoulders slumped, clutching the flag. She saw the quiet dignity in my retreat. And then, she did something. She took out her phone, a small, sleek thing in her steady hand. She didn't hesitate. She didn't look around. She just called. I couldn't hear her words, of course. The distance, the noise, swallowed them up. But I could imagine her voice, clear and strong, describing what she'd seen. I could imagine her anger, her sense of injustice. Who was she calling? I didn't know. A friend? Someone who could help? Someone who would care? A tiny spark of hope flickered within me. Maybe someone had seen. Maybe someone had understood. Maybe someone cared enough to do something. But I didn't dwell on it. The cold was getting to me, and the rejection weighed me down. I kept walking, away from the museum, away from the hurt. I didn't know that across the street things were starting to change, that her call would set things in motion. Inside, it was a different world. Warm, filled with voices, music, a hushed kind of respect. A world away from the cold and the sting of being turned away. The director's voice boomed, talking about sacrifice, duty. Words like honor and courage filled the air. The very things I thought I'd find here. The very things that felt so hollow now. I can picture it. Rows of people listening, the smell of flowers, the weight of history hanging heavy. I can hear the polished words, the practiced delivery, the serious faces. A children's choir sang patriotic songs, their voices pure and clear. They sang about freedom, about bravery. It was beautiful, touching even. But it also felt distant. Then a video played, showing young, sharp veterans. They told their stories, their modern-day service. They looked the part, the perfect image, mixed with old war footage of battles and losses, of the price paid. The director spoke again, his voice full of feeling. "Today, we honor those who served," he said, "those who put service above self." The crowd cheered, a wave of approval. I can almost hear the cheers, the clapping, the heartfelt thanks, the kind of thanks I'd hoped for, the kind of recognition I'd expected. But as I sat outside, nursing my pride, clutching my brother's flag, the words felt empty. They were for a different kind of veteran, a younger, cleaner version. Not someone like me. The guard, I imagine, was still there, checking IDs, keeping his line. Unaware of the irony, the contrast between the words inside and what had happened outside. Inside, they celebrated the idea of a veteran, neat, heroic, easy to digest. Outside, I sat, a reminder that service is messy, that age happens, that veterans aren't always what people expect. I found a bench, a bit out of the way, where the city noise was quieter. The bench was cold, a dusting of snow swirling around it, like the chill in my heart. I sat down, the disappointment heavy on me. The flag, my brother's flag, was still tight in my hand. I ran my fingers over the folds, the worn fabric a small comfort. It was a link to a life, to a time, to a loss that still felt close, even after all this time. A reminder of what service really costs. Memories came flooding back. Korea, the hard land, the fear, the faces of the men. Young men with their whole lives ahead of them, many of whom never came home. The cold, the mud, the smell of war, Vietnam, the heat, the confusion, the questions, the weight of command, the burden of it all. The faces of the people we were there to help, the faces of those we fought. A mix of pride and regret, of courage and loss. These weren't stories from books. They were my stories, my life, etched into me. They were who I was, who I'd always be. And yet, today, they counted for nothing. The irony wasn't lost on me. A veteran, turned away from a veterans museum. A soldier, rejected from a place meant for soldiers. It was a bitter pill, a reminder of the gap between the idea and the reality. It wasn't the first time I'd felt this. Over the years, I'd seen it, this disconnect. The polite smiles, the empty words, the way the old and the frail are often overlooked. It was a familiar pattern. Anger, once strong, had faded into disappointment. Disappointment had hardened into a quiet acceptance. Not that I didn't care, but I'd learned to expect it. The world moved on, and we, the old ones, were often left behind, our stories forgotten. I sat there on that cold bench, the snow drifting around me, the city sounds fading. Just an old man holding a flag, a relic of the past, a reminder of what many wanted to forget. The sound broke through my thoughts,